It's the Friday Feels, and we're back with your first sip of the weekend. You're now tuned in to this week's episode of Your Happy Hour. I'm your host, Nicole Carmine, and it's amazing to have you here, joining me this week as we uncover the truths about being a human and a working professional. What are you up to this Friday? Well, whatever it is, this moment is just for you. And we're back with another episode on the Feels podcast called Your Happy Hour. And today we are still chatting about the theme of relieving achieving, which is a big one as we enter the year. And I feel like we all have so much to say about that, and we all have our own experience of that as we battle what that is, achievement, and hopefully celebrate it as much as possible. So today I have a really beautiful and wonderful guest that I've also just got to meet and excited to get to know on this podcast. And a big shout out to one of our previous guests, Vincent, for putting us in touch. It seems like we all met each other quite randomly in the way that we do as expats roaming the world. And I want to welcome you, James, to the Feel Space and the Your Happy Hour podcast. It's really wonderful to have you here.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Nicole. Big fan of the work I've listened to from you. And yeah, super excited to discuss such an interesting topic.
Thanks for listening and tuning in. And yeah, absolutely. So it seems to me like you've had quite a interesting kind of entrepreneurial journey. And I know that recently you've made some decisions to, like you put it, kind of go from extraordinary to ordinary, which is really interesting. And I think maybe you can tell us a little bit more about where your journey has led you to where you are today.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think probably the first thing to say is a bit of context about how I grew up and where I grew up. I was born in England, and my parents came from different sides of the world. So my dad was always born and raised British, but my mum had grown up in New Zealand after being born in Australia. And they tried living in the UK, but my mum didn't really like the weather that much, as you can imagine, especially coming from the Southern Hemisphere in Australia and New Zealand, which is, a bit better. And so they moved to Australia to start a family. So I was 2 when we got to Sydney initially, and today I'm joining from Perth, which is a really nice place to live. It's a place where you can walk into the supermarkets barefoot and shirtless, which I don't know if you can do that at a supermarché at Paris. Probably not exactly. No. And we're technically the most remote, by some definitions, city in the world. We have the best beaches in Australia, which a lot of Sydney-siders and Melbourne-siders would disagree with me on. But we're a really nice place to live, and it's got a great lifestyle, which is kind of why the topic of relieving achieving I find so interesting, because it's actually hard to find that many people in Perth who struggle with that. We have some of the best work-life boundaries that there are. And actually, if you spend too much time in the office, people almost shame you into not working because they say, "What are you doing, mate? Like, people are going to get the wrong idea." And we're all going to have to work harder. So I guess, yeah, in terms of my journey, I brought up by a mother who has a PhD in astrophysics, and a dad who did French literature at Oxford. So as you can imagine, like, quite an extraordinary set of parents to have, and therefore probably my default has always been towards trying to achieve extraordinary things, whether or not that was always in my best interests. That was kind of just the default, because in order to be ordinary in my family, I had to be, or I felt that I had to be extraordinary. So yeah, initially that led me to start my first business venture at a very young age. I was selling these colourful high bounce balls to my classmates in like year 3 or something, raising money for charities. It wasn't much, but it was, it was cool to create this little invention that could do some good. And then, I pivoted towards high school pivoted towards academics in high school, my parents, were like, come on, like, let's get some decent grades so you open up your possibilities. So I kind of fell out with entrepreneurship at that point, but really rediscovered it in university, particularly after finding how boring I found the technical computer science degree that I was doing. And so doing a few hackathons and things like that, I really discovered again that love for the creativity and the ideas and solving problems and solving people's problems and making their lives better. And so I went through a brief period where I was doing way too many things all at once, which was an absolutely awful idea. And I learned that at that point, in order to be a serial entrepreneur, by definition, you have to do one thing after the other. Otherwise, you're a parallel entrepreneur, and those never work, or it's difficult, at least. So, yeah, I kind of came out of that and tried to discover, like, where did my purpose lie, and pretty quickly landed upon using technology to help charities and not-for-profit organisations. And I did that for 5 years after starting Perth's and WA's first social enterprise technology consulting firm with my co-founder, Stephen. And yeah, it was really great. And we achieved a lot in that time, but it still didn't get to the point at which it was going to be sustainable for us long term. And yet to a certain age, and you need to have, financial security and things like that. And so we took the difficult decision at the end of last year that we were going to discontinue it. And I've now since accepted a full-time position, which has been the first job I've actually had in a full-time capacity. So other jobs I've had include refereeing soccer games, but since, being 16 or something, I've basically just been doing my own thing. So it's, now navigating this transition and trying to let go of all that pressure to be extraordinary and relax back into embracing the ordinary, because, it's a pretty good ordinary life in Perth.
That's amazing. Like, what a journey. And I can so resonate with that, also being kind of brought up in a space where I think it's a really good way of saying it, like feeling the need to be extraordinary, to kind of fit in and be loved and all of that. So
which is such a paradox.
Right. And it's strange how we have to kind of wind our way back to going, like, being human is enough, like being and being shining your light in whatever capacity.
Definitely.
Even if it's not a full-time job, that's enough. So what has that been like for you now? Like, does it feel extraordinary in the way that it's ordinary, or?
Yeah, the transition back, you mean? Like coming back to, I guess it's been like tough because there's a lot like laid in there, I suppose, like the letting go of the business that was kind of a part of me, in the sense that when someone asks you, what are you up to? And, inside you're like, am I doing enough? Am I like, good enough? Do I deserve X, Y, Z? You go, well, I've got my business, like, therefore I must. And it's definitely difficult. But the thing that gives me hope, I guess, is like this thought that I don't think humans are naturally overachievers. I don't think it's that we're naturally seeking more and we have to learn how to not seek more. I think that we're naturally happy with the status quo, if our needs are met and we're comfortable, and that it's usually that something makes us seek more, rather than, so it is that unlearning that you're kind of saying. But I think settling into this job, even just using that as one example, it's pretty like weirdly emotional. This idea, especially going from entrepreneur, where I'm getting paid conditionally based upon whether the customers like what I've done. And sometimes, if you're unlucky, they might complain or, refuse to pay your invoice or something like that, to this model which is so foreign to me, where like they pay on a 2 weekly basis and they have faith in me and they trust me. And like I have security and I can plan my life forward. Like, so I mean, in some ways it's hard letting go of the past and what I was doing, but in other ways it feels so inevitable and so beneficial. Yeah,
I think that makes complete sense to me. It's funny that we're talking about this, because this morning I had this thought, like, I don't know if I'm naturally just actually quite like happy to do nothing. Maybe that's my artist heart, that's just like happy to wake up, have my coffee, maybe write a little, knit a little, sing, make songs, whatever it is. And like, do I chase all these things for a specific reason? And it's like what you're saying. I mean, we go and fetch these things for ourselves. I do believe we kind of look for things to help us grow, or opportunities present themselves, and you're like, okay, cool, I'm going to go for this and see where it takes me, and you grow as a person. But I do feel like naturally we're here to be and figure out what that is in the best way possible. But it's funny how life shapes you. Yeah.
This is a sticky note that I have on my mirror, which is like, we're human beings, not human doings, which is like such a simple one, but it's like, sometimes it snaps you out of that mindset of like, I've got to do this. And the other thing that I think we have in common is that we both do business, but we also quite like the creative, the artsy stuff like that. So I write music. I have done poetry in the past, not so much at the moment. But I think that one of the things I found with entrepreneurship is the reason I got into it in some ways was because I loved the creativity. And increasingly what I've discovered over the last, say, 5 years is that actually what I was seeking was art. And I just went into entrepreneurship because it was like the closest I could get to art in a form that I thought was going to pay me and was going to be a legitimate profession. Because it's kind of like, you're creating, you're doing new ideas, new things. And actually, because how busy I was doing the business, I didn't actually have time to do the art where it wasn't tied to business. It wasn't tied to profit. It wasn't tied to delivering a certain outcome. It was just being present with an instrument and being like, oh, that sounds nice. Let me put those two chords together. And it's funny when you do just relax into being, how much still continues to emerge through you. And it's almost that faith part, right? Of like, if you just have faith that you yourself will naturally create, that's the normal state for humans, then it's nice to just watch that and see it come out rather than feel that you have to force it out, I suppose.
Yeah, and I feel that so much what you say, because it's almost like we're channeling in a way. It's like you allow that space for yourself for things to drop in, because it's kind of seated in your heart already. And I love this topic, so I can carry on about it forever.
No, please.
But it is funny how I feel the same. I mean, the reason I started my businesses was to help my own artistic journey, and now I am like empowering other artists, and I don't have enough time for my own artistic journey, So I was saying to the team, I need to take like a day a week and like put that time aside and actually work on that. So it's really weird how we kind of do feel like we need to achieve in a lot of ways, and perhaps it's about finding that validation out in the world of like, hey, if other people can resonate with it, then like you were saying earlier, then it means like I'm doing a good job,
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, I was speaking to a lot of friends over the weekend in preparation for this conversation, because I quite like just throwing ideas around and seeing what people think. And the idea that achievement isn't natural came to me from one of my friends, Kylie, who kind of put it in terms of like an ancient tribal analogy. And kind of what came out of that conversation was, if you're in a healthy tribe where a child is loved for and gets all its nourishment and, feels securely attached and all these great things that we read about as being theoretically possible in self-help books, maybe one day we'll actually discover them. But if you're this child and you want to, and if you say to your parents, like, oh, you know what, Mum, I'm going to go out and I'm going to slay the biggest woolly mammoth I can find. Like, that is so irrational. Like, if your needs are already being met, like, why would you say, I'm going to go out and do this crazy thing that risks death? And so this was her point around, like, usually achievement comes from a place of discomfort. There's got to be something wrong with that tribe, or something wrong that makes you think, you know what, actually, I'm not just going to be present and be here. I'm going to run away and do some grand big thing. And I think you're right. Sometimes it's that validation. But I came up with like 3 different things that I think can lead people to maybe adopt this achiever mindset. I think the first level is like the self. So if you think that I can only love myself once I've done X, Y, Z, so maybe we call that one like insecurity, then the next one could be the interpersonal, the relationships, where you think I can only be loved once I've reached this thing or done this thing. And that's kind of, the validation or approval, whatever you want to call it. And then there's also that level of society at large being like, you must do this thing. This is an obligation almost. And I think the interesting thing is that these challenges or these discomforts, achievement and overachievement isn't the only coping mechanism, I suppose, that people reach for. So even just like within the personal one of, I'll be enough when I achieve this. Another way of doing that is the sort of perfectionism, which I guess is similar in some ways to overachievement, but it's kind of like almost a brother or like a cousin maybe of it.
The bad cousin, yeah.
Yeah, the bad one, the one that you don't want to speak to at Christmas parties because they make you feel terrible about yourself and self-conscious. But the overachievement's kind of like, once I reach this point, then I'll be enough. The perfection's kind of like, if I look like this, if I do this, if I say this, then I'll be enough. So it's kind of like the achievement's kind of like the long term into the future. It's kind of like if you picture a tightrope, right? Like, and you're walking across a valley. The achievement's like, if I reach the other side of the valley, then I'll be enough. And the perfection's kind of saying, well, as long as I never lose my balance along the way, then I'll be enough. And I think some people go either way, but actually what happens a lot of the time, like myself, and I don't know about you, that you kind of end up being both these things, which is just the worst combination. Because not only are you like, I need to reach this goal, but you're like, I must follow these exact steps and I must look good doing it. And it's like, it's so debilitating because, the successful entrepreneurs are the one that somehow managed to have the achievement without the perfection. They can just like throw stuff out there, see what takes off to their heart's content, and they're great. But yeah, when you feel constrained, like I do often, it's really tough. Yeah.
Yeah, I agree with that completely. And I'm laughing a lot. I mean, people for you can't see me. I'm giggling away here because I really resonate with that. I'm such a perfectionist and I've been an overachiever in my life. I've shared a lot of that now already, but it's like, it's still ingrained in you in some way. You always have to make sure that you're aware of it. And I feel that too, it's kind of like exactly like you're saying with the tightrope. I kind of imagine myself like, it's not okay. You can't fall, like you can't like crawl on your hands, like one hand by one hand to get to the other side. No. You have to do it in a certain way. And I've found it really took me a long time to shade perfection and get into this like 80-20 rule where it's like, okay, cool. I got it to 80%. It's perfect. It's fine. Let's just imperfectly perfect. Like there is no such thing as perfection. And I think it's because a lot of us kind of tie our identities to these things. So whether it's like you're sending out a slide deck and you want people to partner with you in some way, and you've moved this little font from one thing to another, and you're just all designing a website or whatever it is. It's so much of you in the world. But when you learn to detach from that and go, this is not me. It doesn't define my worth. I'm safe. I'm happy in myself. Then it's easy kind of to be like, cool, okay, it's not the end of the world to have misspelled something or whatever it might be. So yeah, but it's a tough one. It's not easy to get past that.
So is the solution to not put like yourself in the work, or to do it without being attached? Like, where's the balance that you've found in, slide decks or whatever?
Yeah, I think it's going like, I'm going to sit down now and then there's like a message I need to get out into the world or something I need to say. And it doesn't reflect necessarily on who I am as a person, but I can share my passion through it. And it's more about going like, what is the outcome that needs to go from that? Like a slide deck, like someone's going to look at this and they're not going to think about necessarily who Nicole is on the other side of this email. They're thinking about what they read in front of them, And so, but yeah, it's taken actually a lot of like shedding for me around even just like we were talking about generational stuff that I was sitting with me going like, that's not actually part of me. It's not part of my energy, and it's not my whole energy bubble inside of me, So yeah, and I was laughing about what you're saying because a friend of mine sent me a thing on Instagram, and he said, it's like every artist is sitting at home trying to create this like music or whatever it is, wondering, is anyone going to love this, and listen to it? And then like every podcast is just like, yeah, and so for breakfast I had this and what.
Just imagining that if you put it out into the universe, that someone will come across it, whether it's an alien, traveling across the universe in the year 2300, and they just find this little like CD that's got your podcast recorded on it, and they extrapolate from that what life must have been like on that planet called Earth. Yeah,
it's a tough one, but I think we are very vulnerable beings. I think being human is a very sensitive experience. And I think that's what makes it so tough for us, because we do end up kind of getting constricted in our minds. And yeah, so what have you found? Like, have you had like things that you do to help you with that, or?
I don't know. I think it's, yeah, I think a lot, which is both a blessing and a curse. So, I mean, I often try and think myself out of spirals, but that doesn't always work. Like one of the recent learnings I've had is how much is in the body, because I've always been a very cognitive person. Always, and in some ways I think that I feel about 50 years old. I'm 26, but I feel about double that, just because of the sheer quantity of thoughts I've had, and talking to, a friend about this, she was saying, she's a psychologist, and she was saying, I meet a lot of, 40, 50-year-old people who are having these crises of, I've done everything that was ever on my vision board, and yet I feel empty. And so I was kind of like, well, I guess it's good then that I've reached that at half the age. As long as me hitting my midlife crisis at 26 doesn't mean that my life expectancy is 52, that wouldn't be great. But I'm sure it doesn't. I'm sure it just means that I have more time, trying to recalibrate, I suppose. And I think that once you reach, or once you achieve or see on the horizon everything you thought you ever wanted, and you experience it and it's not what you thought it was, that's one of those things where you could read books and things like that talk about overachievement and why it's not effective and all this, and you can kind of cognitively understand it, but there's really nothing like actually just reaching this thing that you thought was going to make you feel a certain way, and realizing that, actually it didn't make me feel like that at all. I just felt tired and burnt out. That makes you go, I need to like fundamentally change the way that I think about living and being. And at certain points I've described it to people as like, the Taylor Swift song, it's like, I'm sorry, Taylor can't come to the phone right now. Oh, why? She's dead. It's like, I'm sorry, like James from 2021 can't come to the phone right now. Why? Because he's dead. Like, genuinely, like that person just didn't exist. And I found that I couldn't even motivate myself to do the things I was doing previously, because I was increasingly aware of the cost to myself, because I'd seen it. Yeah, it felt inevitable that I was going to reach that point, but I don't know. I was reading a lot of, psychology, philosophy kind of books, and sometimes you just have to reach that point where it's too much and it changes you.
Yeah, I think life is experiential. It's like you're saying now, you have to kind of experience it, It's you can understand the theory, but until you feel it in your body, and you're like, well, actually, I do have no more energy left. And I actually am not enjoying this, or whatever it is, that experience. And I always like to talk about like the vibration, like we're just the energy blob, and either you feeling like you're vibrating well and it helps your health and whatever else. But if it's not feeling good, then, that's the point where I think our minds kind of kick into gear and go like, oh, okay, this is, let me halt. And it's funny that we have to kind of do it that way around, right? And I know a lot of books kind of say bypass the mind, go to your heart. Maybe that is a really nice way to do it. I mean,
it sounds good. I don't know if I can do that so easily, but I mean, that is one of the words I have for this year is like intuition, like trying to listen less to my head, because my head's always most of the time pretty noisy, kind of just feeling what feels right. But it's tough when you're a very cognitive person. I don't know.
It is. And I think, but I love that, like the feeling right, because I think you always kind of know where you need to go. And coming back to what you said earlier, it's like the trust and the faith. Like you had trust and faith in yourself kind of to build things, and now other people have trust and faith in you. But it's once you learn how to trust yourself in the decisions you take, that are good for you, I think that's joy. Like, I think that's happiness.
Definitely. Yeah. And that's another lesson that I think I've learned. Actually, just like this weekend, I kind of thought about this. I was thinking about, all this achievement. And previously I would have said that I'm not a very not a person that has a lot of faith that things are going to be all right. I'm a bit of a warrior. I get in my head. I can be a bit anxious. I can get panicked. But I realized that I had this achievement mindset where I thought that once I reached a certain thing, that everything was going to be okay. And I kind of reframed and I thought about it. I'm like, hang on, that's almost a kind of faith. Like maybe I am capable of this faith. It's just I need to kind of pivot it away from being everything's going to be okay because you're going to do this and it's going to solve everything, to being, everything's going to be okay. I mean, ideally, everything's going to be okay because this is okay. Even if it's uncomfortable, it's okay. Or at the very least, it's going to be okay because I can handle it, Yeah. So realizing that maybe I can do that was kind of an eye-opener as well.
I love that. I love that so much. I'm glad you could reach that point. Like that's, I mean, you say it so lightly, but I think it's quite a deep realization in yourself,
Yeah, definitely.
On that point, I actually want to move into a little segment that we do every week, and it's called the gems, because I feel like that's such a gem that you're already mentioning. But just to dig a little bit deeper on the things that we've learned in the week. So it might be something you've learned, or even just something that you feel like you have gratitude for, or that's happened. So for me, it's been, I think we kind of touched on this earlier, but it's just realizing that for growth to happen, I need to shed the generational stuff, and sometimes when you're moving forward in your life, things come up, and it might be in your body, maybe it's something that's I don't know, a pain that you carried on in your DNA from a previous generation, or it could be thoughts like conditioning or something like that, and just seeing them for what they are and going, okay, actually not me, it's nothing to do with me, I know who I am. And then the most important part is actually letting it go, the relieving part, which I think is often hard. I have this new saying that I do. It's whatever's not meant for me, I will gently fade away. Emphasis on gently, and I will allow it to do so. So it's been working really well for me. But yeah, that's been my.
I like that.
What's been yours?
I think lots of things. I've had so many interesting conversations with my friends. I think really thinking back about this idea that I've had a while ago around the past and the future being mirrors to the present. Because I think different people kind of spend different fractions of their life in different mindsets. There are the people that I envy who spend all of their time being completely present. There are the people who maybe focus a bit more on the past, do you remember when it was like this? Smartphones aren't what they used to be, or, back in my day. Then you got the people who, always worried about the next thing, or they talk in terms of what do you do? And you say, I'm building the world's next greatest company that's going to do blah, 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 blah. And, they're kind of where their soul lies is almost in the future. And so I tend to be a little bit towards that camp of I'm always thinking about the next thing, worrying about how am I going to make sure that it goes exactly right? Because if it doesn't, then, oh my goodness, everything's going to be absolutely awful. And I think for me, trying to see that the value of the past and the present is almost to reflect back inwards. So, if you're thinking about getting a new job, then maybe what it tells you about the present is that you don't feel financially secure. If you're looking back at past relationships, then maybe what that's telling you is that you feel lonely. And sometimes it's easier and less confronting to think in those terms of what do I see in the future? What do I see in the past? And then to come back rather than just kind of thinking, I feel lonely. That's almost a confronting thought to have, for example. So yeah, I think that's been a useful little trick. And then the other one that I realized, life is full of great realizations. This was from my other friend Stephen, who was challenging me. He was saying so what does healthy achieving look like? And it was well, what if it's the idea of it's not the destination, it's the journey? But then my thought on that was that, well, hang on, some people, sure, there are some people that tie their self-worth, self-esteem, all that sort of stuff to the achievement, but it could be equally dangerous to tie your self-worth to being on a journey. For example, whether you're the person that says, I'm going to feel enough when I shed 10 kilos, or I'm going to feel enough when I'm doing a diet consistently to reach 10 kilos, they're almost equally dangerous because in both cases, you're not listening to what you want at each stage. And you might be unwilling to let go of that journey or that goal. And I think, so what it was almost comes down to is it's not the destination, it's not the journey, it's actually just the step, it's just being willing and free at each step along the way to choose what you want or what you need. And having achievement be something that you don't set in stone and go, this is where I'm going, I must go there. And it's all great at the start, right? Because you're going, I'm excited, I've set my New Year's resolution, I'm working towards this thing. And initially you're doing it for you because you love yourself and you want to do this great thing. You think, oh, wouldn't it be cool if I could like rap or like do something great? And then you start it, and then you realize once you get into the process, like, oh my goodness, I actually slur my words a lot. Like the consonants are really difficult. Or running's a good example, right? Like at the start, you're like, yeah, I'm so excited. But then 3 months in, you just like hate it. You know, you get up and you go, oh my goodness, I've got to go for another run. And so like it's that really difficult to spot transition between doing it for you and doing it to you, that if you're not present, you're not going to catch. And then you're just kind of in this deficit that you've artificially created for yourself, where you're less happy because you're kind of pushing off the joy and the happiness to some, you know, potential future moment that may or may not come. And even if you do reach it, because you've been so used to living in the future rather than living in the present, you're probably not even going to appreciate it fully. So yeah, I don't know. I've just been thinking about that and trying to have goals and achievements be something that you don't pursue as much as you observe them. You kind of say like, at the moment I've got this goal of writing a song. And then the next day you wake up and you go, like I no longer have that goal of writing this song. Rather than like, I've got this goal and I'm not pursuing it today, I'm doing badly. Or I've got this goal and I'm working towards it and I feel good. Kind of, yeah, treating it more as like a description rather than a prescription.
Yeah. Oh, I love that. I feel like that's really the definition of being in the present, is going like taking every second, every moment, every day at a time and seeing what still aligns, because we're changing all the time, right? I mean, faster than we probably realize. And while you're sleeping, it's like accelerating. So I think that's amazing advice. And, you know, I feel the same. It's when I was younger, I had these goals and it was like lists of things, and I did them and it was great and I did more than them. But now my goal is like for the years just like the word bloom, like just bloom, you know, like what does that look like every day, and enjoy that process, you know. And
that's amazing.
Yeah, so I really love that. And I also want to ask you one more question on that,
Sure.
because I'm sure along the journey of discovering all these things, you mentioned reading some books. So we have a reading list, which is called The Stack. And I want to ask you what's in your stack. So maybe part of your goals is reading some more books that's on your pile, or maybe you've got some that you'd like to recommend to the audience. But it's a reading list. Yeah,
definitely. I've got my number one book that I like the most right now is it's by Oliver Burkeman. So Oliver Burkeman wrote 4,000 Weeks, which I love about, you know, living intentionally for the 4,000 weeks that the average person will have on Earth. But he's recently released a new book called Meditations for Mortals, which one way of describing it is kind of, well, the subtitle of it is Stop Trying to Sort Your life out, Start Living. And it's basically all about like letting go of, you know, all this effort that you put into like trying to be perfect and having all this sort of stuff and just embracing the chaos. And he kind of uses the analogy of like trying to kayak through a sea storm, you know, like you shouldn't be trying to like actually get somewhere, just paddle in the direction you want to paddle, see where you get to, but yeah, embrace it. And yeah, and there's so many things that seem counterintuitive, but in the other books that you read about how to be productive, efficient, and effective, you know, it might be something about inbox zero, right? Where, you know, what you've got to do is when an email comes in, respond straight away, blah, blah, blah. But what he explains, and he compares it to the boulder of Sisyphus in the Greek mythology of like pushing this boulder up the hill, because the problem with responding to emails is the more that you send off, the more that you're going to get back. And so sometimes, sometimes in order to feel like you've got more space and time, you actually have to do the opposite of that and just, I don't know, kind of letting it go. And there's lots of great bite-sized lessons in there. And yeah, it's a really quick read. You can read it in a week or a weekend if like I did, even though he says that he recommends that you space them out and reflect on them. Obviously, I didn't do that. I just dived in.
You're being an overachiever.
Yeah, of course. Yeah. I was like, well, if I just read this book, then I'll be enough. So I've got to read it quickly.
No, that's a great recommendation. Thank you so much. I'm excited to read that because that feels very much up the alley of what we're talking about, but also the feels life that we wish for everyone. So we'll be adding that to the stack. So for those who are listening, you can head over to the website, and all the books that we recommend on the podcast are there, and you can click on them and buy them. And I also just want to ask everyone kind of what you're feeling about this topic, you know, after listening to the discussion and thinking about where you might be feeling stuck in the decisions you're making, or getting yourself stuck in a rut and unnecessarily, and where is it maybe time to flow and be in the present. So on that, I also want to say thank you to the people who do make this flow and this conversation possible, and that is our partners, rss.com, and who are our platform that we distribute this podcast through into the world. And then also Blender Bombs, which is a nutritious snack, and they've given our audience a 20% discount if you order with the code TheFeels. And you can also DM us more on the socials about that, and some other really exciting partnerships coming up. And then very last but not least, I want to do a quick shout out to what we do every week, and that is our people, places and spaces. So James, it's like we pick someone or organization, or it could be anything that we feel have the feels. And so one of my other ventures, the many that I'm also working on, is called Be Live. And we are starting to host more and more experiences for people to get together in person and connect around music and art and nature. And recently had a really awesome call with the guy from Shotgun Partnerships head, Jules, here in France. And I just want to say thank you so much. He's such an awesome human. It's not often that you get on a partnership call and have that kind of very real and raw experience. So shout out to Shotgun and to Jules especially. And yeah, so that kind of wraps it up to an end. Yeah, and I want to say thank you to you for coming on and just sharing so honestly, so openly. And it's so wonderful to hear what your journey has been. And I'm sure where you're flowing with, life will find a way to make that extraordinary.
Yeah, no, it's been an absolute pleasure making the time zones work, and hopefully I'm not the first and not the last Aussie that you get on, to make sure we're well represented in the Parisian scene. And I'll have to catch up when I'm over in Paris, come to one of these experiences. They sound very cool.
That'll be awesome. Do let me know, and then we can make a plan. And thank you so much also again, and hope to also make it to Australia sometime again.
You absolutely should. And there's a direct flight now from Paris to Perth, so no excuses.
No excuses. Okay. Awesome. Well, we'll check each other soon, and happy feels to you.
Happy feels.
If you haven't just yet, follow Friday Feels on Instagram, Facebook, TikTok, and LinkedIn. You can share with us all your feels this week by tagging us at fridayfeels.co. And you can also find the website at that handle. And now, as you ease into this weekend, take a moment. Celebrate who you've become, what you've overcome, and what is yet to come as you do the crazy and cool things that you do as the authentic you. The truth about life and work is that it's hard, but the beauty is this global working experience that you're in, well, we earn it together. So keep connecting, empowering, and inspiring this week. And of course, keep it raw and real. Until next time.